Well, I am so excited today because all of that work I've been doing studying the priestesses, in the back of my mind has always been that I knew there was an oils priestess amongst us. And so I'm looking to gain some insights into what it involves being a sacred oils priestess. I spoke to Felicity, well, we're going back about 5 years ago now, but there's so much more wisdom in my head that's got lots and lots of questions. So somebody who uses oils completely different to many of us is Felicity Warner. It's so lovely to see you.
Oh, thank you so much, Liz, for inviting me. It's lovely to be here. And you know what? I always get a little shimmer of excitement when I know I'm going to have a chat with you, because there is always a little bit of magic that pops up, and we always have an amazing discussion. And so I've been really looking forward to this. I really have.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. And everybody else better get themselves cups of tea and know that we do have a lot to talk about when we get together. We get very excited.
We do, it's true.
To people who don't know you, Felicity, I'm sure that most people on my feed do know you. But introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you are remarkable.
No, well, I don't think I'd go that far, Liz. What I am sort of, yes, unusually quirky, let's put it that way, for most people probably. I am, I wear two hats really in my work. One is that I'm a soul midwife, and for anyone who doesn't know about that, and it is connected with my sacred oils work, a soul midwife is a holistic and spiritual companion to those at end of life and also their families as well. So that involves a lot of therapeutic work at the bedside to reassure and soothe and help with problems, and also to be one who you can have a deep conversation with, about the meaning of life, all that sort of thing, which is a lot about the work that we do as well. But therapeutically, that work is really underpinned by my Myrrophore work. And if you haven't come across the word Myrrophore, another word is mistress of the oils. And the Myrrh bit actually comes from myrrh, because they're also known in various places, including the Bible, as myrrh-bearing women. And there's a really long history of women working with these so-called sacred oils to realign, rebalance, work on the body's subtle energy systems in quite a different way to a modern aromatherapy, as Liz you were just saying. To unpick that a little bit more, this work goes way, way, way back. We're not really sure how far, to be honest, but the thought is that at least way back to the ancient Egyptian times, and the Myrrophores in that at that stage were really temple priestesses. So this is where we come round to the whole priestess movement as well. And they were very specially trained in healing, but specifically in vibrational healing, so that the oils that we work with them for their frequencies and their energetic properties. So that is how I work with the oils, and I can talk about that later. I heard my phone ring, and I hope that hasn't put you off. Did it make a horrible
No,
noise?
I did hear it. I thought I was a bit worried that somebody was going to come on and do something awful on the screen. No, we haven't been hacked. If it's your phone, that's all right.
Oh, well, we will let it go there. I just thought I needed to mention in case that was very distracting.
While we've stopped your flow, I want to tell you something. So yeah. I'm guessing that Myrrophore comes from Greek,
Yeah.
When you look at the Greek priestesses of Demeter, you have like Caniphoros, carrier of the sacred basket, Thesmophoros, carrier of the sacred law. So these are obviously, rather than like we say myrrh bearing now, but it obviously was the Greek. These are the people that carried the myrrh.
They carried the myrrh, exactly. And that's a really interesting point to make, Liz, because although my lineage is thought to date back to these Egyptian times, the sort of the modern parlance, as you were saying, or the modern title has its basis in the Greek language.
Right.
So, and I think we were kind of touching on this when we had a chat the other day, that these traditions so weave in together, don't they? There are so many aspects of the pathways, that flow in together. So it's quite hard to kind of be to be very analytical about them, because of course the other thing to remember is that these are mainly orally transmitted traditions. So very little was written down. Having said that, as many of us will know, there are prescriptions for embalming oils and also anointing oils, I think, in cuneiform in the pyramids. So there are a few written things down, but not very many. So a lot of the work that I've learned and now teach is very much transmitted teacher to teacher, and very little has been written down over the past. So it's a very rich and interesting area, and there's a lot of symbolic sort of language, and there's a lot of sort of stories behind the oils that come into the work as well. And although that sounds quite archaic, in fact, what excites me so much, Liz, is the fact that the way the oils work and has worked in history, it's so up to date with modern times as well. They work so beautifully now, as well as they did way back in those times, even though we've got modern medicines now doing all sorts of things and other modern therapies. But the oils have got something so fresh and potent, I think, for these times, which I just think it's very interesting how they've kind of revived and come back in and are being used again. So there's a lot there.
And I really get what you were saying about like the sort of, well, first of all, the oral tradition. That was one of the key challenges I came up against when I was writing the Melissa stuff, because when you hear something, it lands really differently to when you write it down, doesn't it?
Absolutely does.
And actually when you're looking at Egyptian stuff rather than Greek stuff, it does happen in Greek, but not so much as it does in Egyptian. You'll see that it's like this symbol means this symbol means this symbol, because this thought led to that thought, and there's all sorts of punning all the way around, isn't there? And so I can really see how that works, and it is because it sparks the thought in your head, isn't it? That symbol comes in, that energy comes in when you have that, like that word association.
It does. You're absolutely right. And it is very interesting when we're dealing with symbols and things, because I'll talk a little bit later about anointing and how within that we actually use in some forms of anointing, there are symbols that we use, very much like the modern Reiki symbols, and the symbols carry energy, they transmit energy, and then they potentize what you're doing alongside using the symbol. So if you're working with an oil and a symbol, you're getting a stronger force field, in a sense, that's working because of that. But it's so interesting, isn't it, working in a tradition where there isn't that much written down, because you're embodying the knowledge, and it has a different kind of feel to it than, as you say, just reading it in a book and thinking, oh yeah, it's just such a different connection with it, really.
and one of the things that, I mean, all of the time I was studying, this was always back in my mind, the things that you'd said in the summit, you know, because it was the one anchor that I got really to knowing somebody who had done priestess stuff. And the one thing that I was fascinated with was how the priestesses, the Melissa priestesses, were able to shapeshift and turn up as trees. And I was like, that is a thing. That is a definite thing.
That is a definite thing. I love it. Or a swan or a tiger, you know.
Yeah, but so, yes, I mean, but it's really easy for anybody to imagine what it's like to embody a tiger.
Yeah.
But to be able, but to the nuances of like to embody this plant versus this plant, that was like, this must be what I was sent to learn, you know. Because immediately you go, this, I know how to do this, you know. You just know in your zone, don't you?
Absolutely. You put that beautifully. You put that so beautifully. Do you know, can I just share a funny story here? Because when I was a tiny little girl, I remember my mother, you know, desperately doing her gardening, and I'd go missing, you know, and she'd think, oh no, where's she gone now? And she'd find me sort of underneath some plant or a flower talking to it, because the connection was so strong, and just sort of embodying the energy field of the plant was just something I just always naturally slipped into. So I spent a lot of my childhood, you know, curled up in a flower bed, just having a sort of conversation. This is why I say I'm a bit of a quirky individual, really.
I think you're with kindred spirits, lady. I don't think you're quirky here at all.
Good.
Very, very active. Sorry. But it's right, isn't it? You know, I do think that we found a beautiful thing in this Walk-Cunning group of women who just go, I don't fit anywhere else, but I really get what you're talking about here.
It's very liberating, isn't it? We can all be who we are, and it's all right.
It does feel like you're coming home, doesn't it? So when we're talking about coming home, I think we do have to like really refer to the lineage. So you've been talking about like Egyptian lineage, I've been talking about Grecian lineage, but I know it's only just this week been her feast day, but we're very much in Magdalena world here, aren't we? You know, I wrote the book about Spikenard, and I really wanted to know, did it seem like this was the oil that she'd used? She is the most famous woman for using oil to anoint, isn't she?
Oh, she absolutely is. I mean, I think she's really the iconic figure. And I think the deeper you go into understanding who she was, what she represented, her healing archetype in a way as well, the more that Spikenard grows in its resonance with that. I really, really do. And you're right, it was her feast day on July the 22nd.
22nd, doesn't it? Yeah.
That's right. And to me, that's like Christmas Day. So, you know, that's the one day in the year.
Is it really?
Oh, yes. Is it ever? I you know, all the bells and all the fireworks come out of my cupboard, and I really sit and talk to her. I really do. So I will make my sacred space. I will get my oils. I will choose which ones I want to work with, because it won't only be Spikenard. You know, I'm doing so much work at the moment with Rose and also Yarrow. So Yarrow's shouting madly at me at the moment. So I brought Yarrow in, and I have my sacred space, and then I just go into a meditation, and then I just open up, and all the stuff comes in. And it's a bit like going to have tea with Mary Magdalene. You know, you knock on the door and she says, come on in, and you sit there, and all the magic happens. So there's that wonderful connection, which I especially love on her feast day, because, you know, the energy feels so vibrant. And yes, so she, the lineage that I'm in is said to be the lineage within which she was trained as well. And again, now this is so difficult, and you can talk to so many different people, and again, it's not written down, so it's hard to know for sure, but there are a lot of pointers that show that possibly she had the connection with the priestesses of Isis, and this great influence again from the Egyptian temples comes in. So, you know, there are certain things that give us pointers that that was a basis of her own priestess teachings. So within my lineage, the lineage that she was in as well, it is accepted that she was a priestess in her own right. So we sort of step outside the Bible's sort of story of her as being sort of Jesus's disciple and whom he cast out the 7 devils from, and that she was a prostitute, blah, blah, blah. In our particular lineage, it is recognized that she was a priestess in her own right and was highly, highly skilled, and was the partner to Jesus, the feminine counterpart, as well as the masculine teaching. So they were the yin and the yang together. So this is all part of the Myrrophore sort of history in the lineage that I'm connected with. So as far as I'm concerned, she's still a living teacher. She's still teaching, but not from an earthbound space, but from the inner temples, which exist in parallel dimensions, which you can access from working in meditation with the sacred oils, because they enable you to transcend the boundaries of the physical form and go into other deep places where you can do deep work and learn deep things. So that's very much for me what I do in my deeper work to develop my own practice.
So interesting, because I don't know if you even know this. So when I was studying with the Melissa, one of them, the lineages that I studied with were Magdalene and Melissa. And so I had the opportunity to be initiated, and I was immediately went, that doesn't feel right to me. I was very much in the bee shamanism, but not the Magdalene and Melissa. And when I questioned myself, it was the Mary Magdalene bit I was not happy with. I was like, well, I still don't feel like I've met her or engaged with her on any level, really. Right. Not like for instance, Artemis, Aphrodite, even Isis, Hathor, all of those I had, but I still have not with Mary Magdalene, and I'm fully aware of that.
Interesting.
But also I think it's because I don't know how to get there. So in my brain, because of the way my brain works, and everybody works differently, don't they? I'm very much like, okay, so let's think. Hathor is joy and drunkenness and dancing. I know where she is, you know. I know where Dionysus is. I know where the Maenads are. They're in the chaos, you know. And so I saw yesterday somebody in a witchcraft page actually had said, I'm really confused. There's loads of people who are saying they're witches and they're worshipping Jesus. How can that be? And I was like, well, how can they say, or they were saying, how can they say it was a deity? And I was like, well, they're pagans. They worship lots of people. And he's the Christ energy is forgiveness, passionate love. Yeah, okay, I'm there. Still don't know where Magdalene is.
Yes, where is she? Well, Liz, there is something that is, and again, this goes back to what I was saying right at the beginning, that the Magdalene energy is also very connected with transition energy. And so there is this kind of swing within her energy field of working with the dying, and it's very, very strong. And a huge amount of the sacred oils work is about understanding the energetics of transition and how that affects not only the physical body, which we all know about as death, but also the psychospiritual aspects. And this is where the oils come and form a kind of a bridge in a way, helping us to span non-physical and physical realities. So I would say that to look for the Magdalene energy, you may have to step into that energy vibration of transition, because she resides very much there. And that isn't always a place that people feel comfortable with. So, you know, it may well be that that is...
Melissa work is very much about being in the liminal.
Okay.
All of the time. But as you quite rightly say, some liminal spaces are more comfortable to me than others.
Yes.
And
for
I'm
all of us.
aware that me and Death, we've got a thing that we're not.
Okay.
And but what's really interesting though is talking to you yesterday, and I will send you the link. I spoke to a lovely lady called Joanna Joy, who, without spoiling her story too much, is working with or has been working with the spirit of somebody very close who committed suicide and helping him to cross over.
Yes.
And so it's so very odd to be like 2 days in, sessions in, and then also today 3 people have died, and I'm like, okay, bees, I know what you're doing here.
Okay. Yes, just take note and listen without using your ears too much, because it sounds like there's quite a lot of happening. It's very interesting how we're giving these nudges, isn't it?
Fascinating, isn't it?
It is. And usually there will be a very good reason for it. You know, something will be opening up and presenting itself perhaps as something to take note of. Gosh, that's interesting. You see, in fact, that also comes in strongly into the Myrrophore work, is helping those who have recently transitioned. So it isn't always just the dying, but it's also the newly dead. So that's a huge part of the work as well.
Yeah, and she was talking about how she's doing it with it. I really don't want to spoil the video for people, because it's a very precious thing and people should definitely watch it. So this person was newly dead, but she was told by her spirits, you use what we taught you doing the healing of the ancestor lines.
Wonderful.
And so that was fascinating. She got like five generations of healing going on, using not oils, using flowers predominantly.
Oh
yeah.
Oh, that is deeply precious work.
Isn't it?
How you named it as that, because it really, really is so sacred and so precious. How wonderful.
So what I'll do, actually, just to make it easy for people, I'll connect Joanna's video to the end of this, so it'll come up, and then we can immediately go into that. That's clever of me, I have to say.
That is genius.
But what I really want to talk about is there will be people like me who are wussies around death and will go, so that's not for me. And I'm aware that there is a whole other body to the work that is other things apart from death.
Oh, yes.
So we want to sort of cut those people off, do we?
Yeah, no. We really, really don't want to cut those people off, because, okay, in a nutshell, let me just give you a tiny snapshot of how the sacred oils work. First of all, they're sacred because of the intention and the way that they're being used. So lavender can be a sacred oil alongside being an aromatherapy oil or a clinical aromatherapy oil. But if we're using lavender for a specific purpose, such as to refresh and rebalance the energy field of someone, which it's very, very good for, we would set that intention and focus on that, and that is what then it makes it sacred for that piece of work we're doing. So it enters into the sacred oil repertoire. And so I use, well, it is expanding, but there are about 20 oils that are the sort of foundation of the repertoire, but more and more come in as they announce themselves, really, because they're they're living intelligences. They're not just little static bottles, you know, they come with power and wisdom and teaching. And so I work with people who have phobias, who have got worries and stresses, all sorts of psychological problems, spiritually based problems, such as feeling they have a soul wound that is within them that they want help with, you know, a fear of I don't know, abandonment, or that they aren't being heard, or that they're not living their life to their full potential. All of those sort of situations can potentially be helped with sacred oils, because the sacred oil, as I mentioned before, will have its own personality, its own frequency band that will resonate with that aspect of the person who is feeling a certain emotional state of being. For instance, violet's incredible for grief. It's just so wonderful. And I use violet for people who have deep, raw grief. I work with it with people who've got dementia, Alzheimer's, who aren't verbal anymore, but they have grief within them. Perhaps they've lost a partner or a child and they're not able to express anymore. So working with the violet that has the frequency of grief alongside the person, you can enable them to release what they've been keeping held in without even having to talk about it. So that's how the oils can work. So it's not just death and dying work, it's all manner of all sorts of psychological states, mainly psychological. So the oils come in and they rebalance spirit, soul and physical body, and that's the main way that they work. Come and rebalance.
How would you apply them? So obviously we talk about anointing. I know that you are deeply into anointing. Is it always anointing?
It isn't always anointing, but it often is. And of course, that's another thing. If you think back to the Mary Magdalene link again, although there is some, you know, it's not known for sure if she was the one that worked with Spikenard. I feel deeply it was her, and there is a lot to suggest it was her, that she used spikenard and anointed at the Last Supper before the crucifixion. And so anointing is very much part of our tradition. And basically how it works is it's very simple. You've got some of the oil on your own hands. You use yourself as the vessel to transfer the frequency of the oil. And by anointing, putting some on your hands and then maybe smoothing the feet of the person that you're working with, or their heart area, or maybe their third eye area here, then you're giving them, transmitting the energy of the oil onto a point within them that is going to really receive that vibration. And again, part of how it works is the focus that you use when you're transmitting the oil. Does that make sense?
It does. And I feel like I'm going to ask you a question that I feel like in every fibre of my being, I've asked you before and then can't remember the answer, so apologies if I have. But so the first thing is that I have this thing about non-words, right? That people use words so much that the meaning is lost. So like awesome is not chicken nugget, guys. It's just not, right? And I do think The word intention is getting a bit like that. So I
It is.
absolutely love the way that you explained how you do your focus, right? So my question to you is, when I was taught to heal, because obviously, well, I don't know, maybe it's not obvious. My first training as an aromatherapist was spiritual aromatherapy before I did anything else. So we were taught, right, you use the sun, you work as a transmitter for the sun, and it comes through you.
Yeah.
So when we say vessel, are we saying the healing comes from us, or are we saying we're the funnel?
Oh no, it's coming from outside us, but coming through us, as you were saying, you know, we channel the energy of the oil, but we also have some on our hands. If we are doing a hands-on face-to-face session, we can do it without, but that's a little bit more complicated. But it's so, for instance, we can also anoint ourselves. That's another thing that we can be doing with these oils. And for instance, and I teach my students this a lot, you know, if we want to feel something and understand the depth of something, a problem or a conundrum, if we anoint ourselves a little bit of oil, and then we set the intention that we want to understand something or see the deeper meaning of something, and then anoint the heart chakra, so just about here, that would be where we would anoint ourselves for a deeper understanding of something. If we want to anoint with the intention of seeing something, seeing what is hidden in plain sight, then we would anoint on our third eye, for instance. So there are various anointing techniques, and those would be two of them: anointing with sound, anointing with color, anointing with breath. There are all these sort of slightly different techniques you can use, and so I'll be teaching these on August the 24th. Yes, I've got that right.
It's a one-day workshop.
It's not even a one-day workshop, it's an evening workshop. So it's 7 till 9. It is intense, so I try not to blow people away by making them too long, because people look quite sort of spaced out after working at this level of intensity. So it's 7 till 9, and it's being her hands. So this is something that came through during a meditation, actually, with Mary Magdalene. She was saying, look, show people how to be my hands when they are doing this work. And I thought, oh, that's beautiful. Yes, of course I will. So that was how the course sort of came into being, really.
You know what? That's so weird. That's almost what the plant said to me. So I really need to go back through the Facebook things now, maybe, I don't know, February time. That I was like trying to work out how to explain, to embody a plant. And I said, you know, a plant can't move, so a good therapist is the plant's hands.
Oh,
isn't that strange that we both said the same thing?
That is strange, but rather beautiful.
It is very much like collective consciousness, isn't it? You know, it just like moves, and I do think that's why when I was trying to study the mysteries of Eleusis, you're like, well, what happened? Well, actually, there's 2,000 years of what happened. It wouldn't have stayed the same. Yes. And when you look at aromatherapy, when I started 30 years ago, oh my God, that number. There's no resemblance to how it is now, isn't it? The consciousness moves and shifts. It does all of the time.
Move. Yeah. And at the moment, it's moving very fast.
Yes,
much faster than we could ever imagine. I think probably a few years ago. So you're right. Yes, the consciousness is really moving. So yes, and we're sharing this bubble of thought and consciousness more than ever. Definitely.
Yeah, and I do think also that shift is away from medicinal therapy. It's very much going over to what you and I are talking about now. Yeah. Not least, I think, because we were all locked down, and so many people are suffering from anguish of different sorts. And the plants are going, yeah, but look what we did. We helped you when you walked in the forest. We helped you when you're in the citrus groves. Don't stop using us.
Oh, Liz, they absolutely are saying that. Their voices collectively are so loud, and they are really saying, every time I walk into my garden, they're saying, hello, hello,
Yep.
here we are, work with us. And this is the time to be doing it. I really, they have so much to share, so much healing to give us. It's phenomenal.
It's so fascinating for me because, of course, now I've moved on from doing the Melissa work. Of course, that comes with me. I am Melissa now, but I am working with Myrrh, and that's what I'm writing about. And it's so interesting seeing what a different personality she's got. So, like, Melissa was like, you will stay under the thumb, you will not move, I will sink you, you will not do anything else till this is done. And I don't care what it costs, you will do it, you will.
Oh.
Whereas Myrrh just goes, oh, hello. Time. If you've got time, that's great. If you haven't, don't worry.
They have such different personalities, don't they, these oils? Yeah. And you get to know them. They are like friends.
Yeah.
And I argue with them sometimes, but they always have the last word. I mean, they just do, don't they?
It's
but
so weird, isn't it? I mean, if somebody was like outside of our realm and heard us talking like that, they'd be like, you are absolutely stark staring mad, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mad.
Well, I was something else I wanted to ask you. Oh no, I wanted to tell you about something that happened on your workshop before.
Oh.
So I don't think that I've shared this with you, and I think that people will enjoy hearing this. So this was working on one of your sacred oil workshops before, and we were working with Angelica.
Okay.
And so, and actually, that was one of those funny situations where I hadn't even seen your course come up. And then how had I not seen it? And it was like, it's on in 20 minutes. Right. So I just went, right, I'm coming. So I'm meditating with Angelica, and I'm like, right, I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to do. I have done all of this work with Melissa work, and frankly, I don't want to go back to aromatherapy. I don't want to go back to the squabbling nature of the arguments, always worrying about safety, getting dragged into all that. Don't want it. So I sat there with Angelica, and one of my spirit guides, who is a bee, turned up, and she's naughty. She's always naughty. Her name's Parsnip, and she takes the piss all of the time. And she's dancing round the Angelica, round. And it's like the furthest away picture to what, this plant is, the plant of the archangels, angel of the archangels, or archangel of the archangels. And there's this naughty bee playing up, and what are you doing? What are you doing? And she's like, what do I seem like? I said, I don't know. I said, you seem like a naughty bee, and you're not helping me, and you're not helping me. And she said, so what do you know about naughty bees? I said, I don't know what I know about naughty bees. Right, well, what am I now? And she started doing like this really coquettish dance. And I was like, oh, you're like an Aphrodite bee. She was like, yeah, okay. So what do you know about Aphrodite bees? So I was like, well, I don't know. And then she was like, what? I don't know, you're horrible. What do you know about horrible bees?
Oh.
I don't know what I know. She said, go away and think about it. Anyway, so the next day I was like, why am I thinking about archetypes?
Oh.
And that was like the beginning of aromathology, because I was like, that's where it came from, because I was like, all these different embodiments are just like patterns that you immediately recognize, and that's where aromathology came from. Just aggressive meditation with you.
How interesting is that? And also within the Myrrophore tradition, Angelica is seen to be an absolute master teacher. And so the master teacher will bring in the teaching in whatever way she can that will speak to you. So maybe she summons Parsnip up to come and kind of, fly in front of you and ask you those questions. That was really interesting.
Also, she always turns up. I mean, like I say, she's naughty, but she always turns up with Embellifera plants.
Oh,
her name, Parsnip. That's not her real name, but that's why I called her Parsnip, because she's fascinated by Umbellifera plants.
I love
I
it.
know, it's really fascinating how your brain makes connections, isn't it? And I do think that's go right back to what you said at the beginning. You know, those connections are almost not, you can't write them down. They're quick, like, connections you make in your brain.
Yes. Oh.
Well, I'm very excited to see what happens on this workshop. And I have to tell you how much you look like the embodiment of Yarrow sitting there in your blue. You look so good. So that's really nice.
Very nice of you. That's very nice. I do love yarrow, and I am busy making yarrow oil at the moment. So
oh, how lovely. Do you know, I went out the other day and I said I might need to come back and steal all this yarrow that's growing around this Discovery Centre, just so that I can watch it turn.
oh, it's a wonderful oil, isn't it? Aren't we?
Isn't it? I do love it. Do you know, I was stung the other day by a bee. There wasn't their fault. I was looking in the water and I was in the pond and I was in their flight path and got in my hair. They think I'm a flower, and it often happens.
Oh.
And it was a right horrible sting. And I made a blend of Roman chamomile and yarrow and eucalyptus. And you know, the sting had gone in 5 minutes.
No.
Fantastic. I couldn't believe it. And I was going out with my friends, went to Birmingham, and I just got really greasy hair from going with this oil. Didn't look very glamorous.
Trouble, isn't it? How fantastic, though. That's really interesting. And actually, there's a lot of yarrow growing this year. It's like
loads, isn't there? That's what I said. Yeah,
everywhere. And that's for a reason. That's definitely right. For a reason.
Definitely all those wounded people around.
Very much so.
So you will give me all the details to put below the
I will.
Film, won't you? Is there anything else that you want to tell people before we go?
Oh, I can't think of anything, Liz, that well,
if you do, remember it for your course. You can tell them then.
I will do. I will do. It'd be lovely to see anyone who wants to come. I teach. It's boom, boom, boom. There's a lot of information. So come along, but bring some oils with you, something you're really feeling you want to work with. And I'll teach you some anointing techniques, and we'll have fun as well, because that's really important. So
definitely is.
Be lovely.
Well, Felicity, say bye, but stay on the video. Bye, everybody.